He waited until both his sons were sitting down. Then the old man told them that the family business, the most trusted name on Wall Street, the name they had both worked under their entire careers, was a lie and had been for years. He said there was $200 or $300 million left, and he was going to hand it out to employees, family and friends, and then turn himself in. It was the 10th of December, 2008, on Manhattan's Upper East Side. His sons listened without saying a word. What they did in the next 12 hours is how the largest Ponzi scheme in history actually ended. The man was Bernie Madoff. And what the agents found over the following weeks was the last, best version of a trick 100 years old, explained in every newspaper, taught in every business school, and working on somebody right now today. 4 men ran it bigger than anyone else ever has, and each one fixed the flaw that killed the man before him. All 4 still died on the same piece of arithmetic. We are coming back to that apartment, and to what those 2 sons decided. But Madoff did not invent a single part of this. He inherited it from a broke dishwasher in a rented Boston office, 90 years earlier, who ran the same machine for one summer and got his name stapled to the crime forever. His name was Carlo Ponzi, Charles, once he got to America and he had almost nothing. He had arrived with a few dollars in his pocket, worked as a dishwasher, done time in Canada for forgery and in Atlanta for smuggling immigrants. And in 1919, he opened a piece of mail that changed his life. Inside was something called an international reply coupon, the most boring piece of paper in the world, and the one about to make him the most famous man in Boston. Here is what it did. If you wrote to someone abroad, you could enclose a coupon, and they could swap it at their post office for the stamps to write back. But the First World War had wrecked Europe's currencies. In Italy, where the lira had collapsed, those coupons were dirt cheap. In America, where the dollar was strong, the very same coupon redeemed for far more. Buy low in Rome, redeem high in Boston. On paper, the arithmetic was real. Ponzi calculated that after expenses, he could make a 400% return. He promised investors 50% profit in 45 days, or 100% in 90. In a country where a savings account paid 5% a year, it was intoxicating. The money came slowly at first, then in a flood. By the summer of 1920, people were queuing down School Street, pushing cash at his clerks. Police officers invested. Priests invested. At the peak, he was taking in an estimated $250,000 a day, in $1920. He bought a mansion in Lexington with a heated swimming pool. Boston loved him. There was only one problem, and it was fatal. The trade did not work. The coupons were real. But actually buying millions of small paper coupons across Europe and redeeming them at post office counters, which by law would only exchange them for stamps, not cash, was impossible at scale. Investigators later estimated that to back the money Ponzi had taken in, roughly 160 million coupons would have needed to exist. The actual number in worldwide circulation was about 27,000, and Ponzi had barely bought any at all, by most accounts a token amount, a few tens of dollars worth, in the very first weeks. So where was the money coming from? It was coming from the next investor. Ponzi was paying his early investors their spectacular returns with the cash handed over by later investors, and pocketing the rest. That's it. That's the whole machine. And this is the machine underneath every story that follows. A Ponzi scheme is not a bad investment. It is the absence of an investment. There is no pot of money. Your cash comes in one door and goes straight out another, into the hands of the person who invested just before you. And when you ask how it is doing, someone reads you a number off a piece of paper. That paper is the entire product. The only thing a Ponzi scheme manufactures is a statement, and this is where it turns lethal. Watch what the arithmetic does. Ponzi promised 50% in 45 days. Say he takes in $10,000. 45 days later, he does not owe 10,000, he owes 15. And the only place to find that 15 is to sell the same promise to new people, who are then owed 22.5. Then's 33. Then's 50. Every 45 days, the hole gets half again as deep, forever. Run that one $10,000 out 3 years, and the debt is over 160 million. That is the death sentence. The debt grows geometrically, and the supply of human beings does not. A Ponzi scheme does not collapse because someone catches it. It collapses because arithmetic catches it. The whistleblower, the crash, the raid only pick the date. That is the machine. Everything from here is 4 men decorating it. And if you want the rest of these, subscribing is why I get to keep making them. For Ponzi, the end came fast. The Boston Post began publishing an investigation in late July, and the run started almost immediately, depositors mobbing his office, demanding their money back. Then, on the 11th of August, 1920, the Post revealed his criminal record in Canada, and it was finished. He pleaded guilty to federal mail fraud, was deported to Italy, and died in a charity ward in Rio de Janeiro in 1949, with about $75 to his name, just enough to bury him. He was not the first to run this trick. He was just the loudest, and the newspapers made his name permanent. Every scheme that followed would be measured against a dishwasher from Lugo, and the noise was his real mistake. 50% in 45 days is not a promise you can make quietly. It draws a crowd, and a crowd draws reporters. Everyone after him learned the same lesson. The pitch is not the trick. The trick is being the last person anyone would think to ask for proof. Every word you have just heard was front-page news across America in 1920. And 80 years later, a man who helped build the NASDAQ ran the identical machine, in plain sight, on the richest people in the world. And the people paid to stop him looked directly at it and walked away. Bernie Madoff was not a flashy outsider, promising 400%. He was the establishment, chairman of the NASDAQ, a fixture on industry boards. His firm was a genuine high-volume market maker. That part was real, and it ran on a different floor of the same building. He was quiet, respectable, famously exclusive. You had to be invited. That exclusivity was the weapon. Investors were recruited through country clubs, charities and synagogues, largely across the Jewish communities of New York and Florida, a pattern investigators call affinity fraud, where the con travels along lines of trust. And the returns did not look absurd at all. That was the sophistication of it. Madoff promised something far more seductive, around 10 to 12% a year, in good years and bad. Almost no down months. Ever. That impossible smoothness was the real red flag, and a handful of people saw it. A financial analyst named Harry Markopolos later said it took him 5 minutes looking at the returns to know they were impossible, and 4 hours to prove it mathematically. He warned the Securities and Exchange Commission repeatedly over roughly 9 years. One memo bluntly titled to say the world's largest hedge fund was a fraud. The SEC investigated and cleared him. Madoff later said he once handed regulators a reference number they could have used to check whether his trades existed at all, and nobody ever did. Because the trades did not exist. Investigators found the advisory arm had not executed a meaningful trade for clients in years. On the 17th floor, staff produced fake statements on an old IBM computer, backdating trades that never happened, printing on aged paper to make the records look authentic. Every document a client ever received described transactions that were pure fiction. For years it held, because in calm markets few people withdraw everything at once. Then came the crash of 2008. Investors everywhere needed cash, and redemption requests poured in, around $7 billion of them. There was nothing to pay them with. And so, on the 10th of December, Bernie Madoff called his 2 sons to the apartment on the Upper East Side and told them the family name was a lie. Here is what those 2 sons did with that. They let their father finish. They said almost nothing. Then they walked out, called a lawyer, and the lawyer told them there was exactly one thing they could do. The next morning, agents arrested Bernie Madoff at his home, on the word of his own children. The machine stopped. Customer statements claimed roughly $65 billion. The actual cash investors had put in and lost was later estimated at closer to $17.5 billion, still the largest Ponzi scheme ever uncovered. Around 37,000 victims, across more than 130 countries. In June 2009, Madoff was sentenced to 150 years. His sons, Mark and Andrew, were never charged with any crime, and both said to the end that they knew nothing about the fraud until the night their father confessed. It destroyed them anyway. Mark died in December 2010, 2 years to the day after his father's arrest. He was 46. Andrew died of cancer in 2014 and said publicly that he believed the fraud had caused it. That is 2 of the 4. The last one hid behind a company you have almost certainly owned, something made by. If you are still here, you already know whether this is your kind of thing. Madoff had one weakness left. He was still inside the American system. He still had to open his doors to the SEC. 1,500 miles south, another man had solved that, not by hiding from the regulator, but by buying the country the regulator worked for. Alan Stanford was Texan and spectacularly rich in appearance. He poured money into cricket across the West Indies, landing a helicopter on the field at Lord's with a perspex chest, supposedly holding $20 million in cash. He was knighted by Antigua and Barbuda and insisted on being called Sir Alan. The engine underneath was Stanford International Bank in Antigua. It sold something that sounded boring and safe: certificates of deposit, the kind of product your grandmother might own. Except Stanford's paid dramatically more than any American bank, and, like Madoff's returns, they paid it with unnatural consistency. Investors were told their money sat in a conservative, diversified portfolio of liquid assets, watched by a team of professional managers. There was no team. The bank's finances ran through Stanford and his old college roommate from Baylor, James Davis, the chief financial officer, a small-town accountant signing off on billions. Prosecutors showed that a large share of the money had been funneled into Stanford's own ventures and his personal lifestyle, including well over $1 billion in undisclosed loans to himself. And Antigua's top financial regulator later pleaded guilty in a United States court to obstructing the sex investigation, admitting he had taken more than $500,000 in bribes from Stanford. When the SEC finally moved in early 2009, around $7 billion was gone. Roughly 30,000 investors in more than 100 countries, many of them ordinary savers in Latin America and the United States who believed they had bought the safest product in finance, were ruined. In 2012, a jury convicted Stanford of fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 110 years. But all three of those men shared one weakness. When an investor got nervous, there was nothing to show them. No warehouse, no truck, no product, only paper. The fourth man fixed that. His fraud came with a supply chain. He owned Polaroid, the camera company, bought outright. He owned Sun Country Airlines. And his cover story was so convincing that the banks handing him money believed they were making the safest loan on their books. The money behind all of it, Tom Petters told investors, came from a beautifully simple business. His company bought huge quantities of surplus goods, televisions, appliances at a deep discount, and resold them to big box retailers like Costco and Sam's Club. To finance each deal, investors lent against a specific purchase order. Short-term, secured against real goods, sold to real household names. It sounded like the least speculative thing imaginable. The goods did not exist. Prosecutors proved the purchase orders were fabricated. The retailers whose names appeared on the paperwork had never placed those orders and had no idea their names were being used. The documents were manufactured on computers by conspirators running shell companies that existed only to generate fake paperwork. Investors' money went to pay earlier investors. It ran for more than a decade, taking in roughly $3.5 billion. It ended in 2008 when one of his own executives, Deanna Coleman, wore a wire for the FBI. Petters was convicted in 2009 on 20 counts of fraud, conspiracy and money laundering, and sentenced to 50 years. Polaroid and Sun Country were dragged into bankruptcy. A dishwasher, a NASDAQ chairman, a knight, and a Minnesota dealmaker. Each one patched the hole that sank the man before him, the noise, the oversight, the missing product. And every patch bought exactly the same thing: time. Not survival. Time. Because the machine underneath never changed, and neither did the 5 things it cannot hide. You do not need all 5. If you can say 2, walk away. Start with the one that fooled the most sophisticated money on earth. Returns that are too smooth. Not necessarily too high. Markets move, real investments have bad quarters. Madoff's genius was that he did not promise spectacular gains, he promised consistent ones. And consistency, not size, is the more suspicious of the two. Then there is the strategy you are not permitted to understand. Ponzi's coupon arbitrage, Madoff's so-called split-strike conversion, Petters' purchase orders. In each case the explanation was just technical enough to end the conversation, and questions were treated as impertinence. Then ask the question that actually decides it: who is holding the money and who checks? Madoff was his own custodian, and used a tiny, obscure audit firm to check billions. Stanford's bank sat under a regulator, who later admitted in court that he was taking Stanford's money. And watch the door. If getting in feels like a privilege and getting out is quietly discouraged, that is not exclusivity. That is the machine protecting itself. The last one is simply this: every Ponzi scheme on earth is running a countdown it cannot stop. Charles Ponzi ran his for about a year. Tom Petters ran his for over a decade. Bernie Madoff, the best there ever was at it, ran his for at least 17 years, by his own account since the early 90s, and the people who unwound it suspected far longer, and died in federal prison at 82. None of them beat the maths. Nobody ever has. And if you can now spot returns that are too smooth, or a strategy you are not allowed to question, or an exit that is harder than the entrance, then this was worth your time. There are a lot more of these, the collapses, the frauds, the ones that got away. Subscribe and you will get the next one. Because somewhere right now, someone is being handed a statement full of numbers describing money that isn't there. And they are being told how lucky they are to have been let in.